The boy never spoke until he heard her flute. The autumn wind swept through the streets of Portland, Oregon, carrying crimson leaves that danced like whispers across the pavement. Among them walked Ethan Mercer, a 13-year-old boy whose silence had become as much a part of him as his hazel eyes or the dark curls that fell across his forehead. His mother, Sarah, walked beside him, her hand occasionally brushing his shoulder, a gesture of reassurance that had become routine in their wordless communication. "We're almost there," Sarah said, her voice gentle as they approached Roosevelt Middle School. The building loomed ahead, brick and imposing, filled with the chatter and laughter that made Ethan's stomach tighten. The diagnosis of selective mutism had come when he was 5, but the labels changed nothing about the vast canyon that existed between Ethan and spoken language. Ethan nodded, adjusting his backpack. It was his 3rd school in as many years. His father's job in environmental engineering kept them moving across the country, from Boston to Chicago and now to Portland. Each new beginning came with the same rituals: meetings with counselors, explanations to teachers, and the inevitable stares from classmates who wondered about the boy who never spoke. Principal Davis met them at the entrance, her smile practiced but kind. "Welcome to Roosevelt, Ethan. I've spoken with your previous school, and we've arranged for accommodations." She turned to Sarah. "Mrs. Mercer, we have an excellent music therapy program here. I think Ethan might benefit from it." Inside his homeroom, Miss Jenkins introduced him without fanfare. "Class, this is Ethan Mercer. He's joining us from Chicago." She didn't mention his silence, for which Ethan was grateful. He took a seat near the window, where he could watch the clouds gather and disperse above the Douglas firs that lined the school grounds. Lunch was a solitary affair in the buzzing cafeteria. Ethan had become adept at disappearing in plain sight, his notebook his only companion. In it, he sketched the world as he saw it, detailed drawings that captured what words could not. Today, he drew the cafeteria scene. Students clustered in their social hierarchies, the lunch lady with her hairnet, the janitor mopping a spill by the door. "That's really good," said a voice beside him. A boy with glasses and a Save the Bees t-shirt slid into the seat across from him. "I'm Max. You're in my homeroom." He didn't wait for a response, continuing as if Ethan's silence was the most natural thing in the world. "I like drawing too, but I'm not nearly as good as you." Ethan offered a small smile, adding a few more details to his sketch. Max talked about the school, the teachers, the best places to hide during fire drills. His chatter was a comfortable background noise, asking nothing in return. After school, Sarah was waiting in their blue Subaru, her face brightening when she saw him. "How was your first day?" she asked, knowing there would be no verbal answer. Ethan gave her a slight shrug and a half smile, their code for okay. At home, a modest 2-bedroom apartment filled with moving boxes they hadn't yet unpacked, Ethan retreated to his room. The walls were still bare, save for a corkboard where he had pinned his favorite sketches. He added today's cafeteria scene, then opened his window to listen to the city sounds below. Portland was different from Chicago, greener, slower somehow. The distant sound of traffic mingled with birdsong from the park across the street. Ethan closed his eyes, cataloging the sounds in his mind. The world was full of voices, even if his remained locked inside. That night, as rain pattered against his window, Ethan lay awake, thinking about Principal Davis's mention of music therapy. His father had played guitar before the accident that had taken him away 2 years ago. The memory of those evenings, his father's fingers moving across the strings, was one of the few that could still bring both pain and comfort in equal measure. In the darkness, Ethan reached for his sketchbook and drew by the faint light from the street lamp outside. A boy standing at the edge of a vast ocean, the waves carrying notes of music instead of water. Around him, he drew the silence that had been his constant companion, not as emptiness, but as a physical presence, a barrier between him and the world that no one had yet found a way to breach. 3 weeks into the school year, Ethan had established a routine. He'd become known as the quiet kid who draws, a label that, while not entirely accurate, was preferable to the pitying glances and whispered speculations he'd endured at his previous schools. Max had become something of a self-appointed guide, and occasionally other students would join them at lunch, drawn by Max's easy conversation and Ethan's impressive sketches. Ms. Jenkins had worked out a system where Ethan could participate in class without speaking, written responses, nods, and a small whiteboard for more complex answers. His grades were excellent, his silence never an impediment to his intelligence. It was on a Tuesday in late September when Ms. Jenkins announced a collaboration with the music department. "We'll be working on a project exploring how music influences different cultures," she explained. "Each of you will be paired with a student from Ms. Calloway's music class." The pairings were read aloud, and Ethan found himself matched with someone named Lily Chen. He didn't know her, but Max whispered, "She's in advanced music, plays like 5 instruments or something." Later that day, Ethan made his way to the music room for their first meeting. The hallway leading to it was adorned with posters of symphonies and jazz ensembles, quotes about the power of music, and photographs of student performances. He paused before entering, hearing the soft, melodic notes of a flute filtering through the door. The sound was pure and crystalline, rising and falling like a conversation with the air itself. Ethan stood transfixed, his hand on the doorknob, unwilling to interrupt the delicate flow of notes. There was something in the melody that reached past his ears and settled somewhere deeper, a place he rarely acknowledged, where words waited unused. When the music stopped, he entered. The room was large, with chairs arranged in a semicircle and various instruments stored along the walls. A girl sat alone in the center, a silver flute resting in her lap. She looked up, her dark eyes curious beneath straight bangs. "You must be Ethan," she said, standing. "I'm Lily." She was small for her age, with a quiet confidence in her movements. "Ms. Calloway said you don't talk, but that's okay. I talk enough for 2 people when I'm nervous, which is pretty much always except when I'm playing." She smiled, a quick flash of braces. Ethan nodded, taking a seat near her. He opened his notebook, wrote, "Your playing was beautiful," and turned it so she could see. Lily's smile widened. "Thanks. That was part of Debussy's Syrinx. It's about a nymph who turns into a reed to escape a god, and then the god makes the reed into a flute." She paused. "Sorry, I'm rambling. Music history nerd here." Ethan wrote again. "I like the story and the music. For our project, we're supposed to explore how music tells stories across cultures," Lily explained. "I was thinking we could focus on how different instruments were developed to mimic human voices. Like, the flute was originally meant to sound like sighing or whispering." Ethan nodded, already sketching in his notebook, a rough outline of a flute transforming into wisps that resembled words. "That's exactly it," Lily exclaimed, looking over his shoulder. "You can draw the visual representations, and I can provide the musical examples." She hesitated. "Would you like to hear more? I've been practicing pieces from different countries." Without waiting for a response, she raised the flute to her lips again. This time, the melody was different, faster, with trills that reminded Ethan of birdsong. He closed his eyes, letting the notes wash over him. In his mind, the music took shape, colors and lines that swirled and danced. When he opened his eyes, his pencil moved almost without conscious thought, capturing the essence of what he heard. They spent the hour like this, Lily playing snippets from various traditions, Ethan drawing what the music evoked in him. By the end, his notebook held a visual symphony. Japanese shakuhachi flute represented as cherry blossoms falling on still water, Irish tin whistle as intertwining Celtic knots, Native American flute as mesa silhouettes against a star-filled sky. As they packed up to leave, Lily asked, "Same time Thursday?" Ethan nodded, offering a small smile that felt different from his usual careful expressions. For the first time in years, he left school with a lightness in his chest, the echoes of Lily's flute still resonating within him. October brought rain to Portland, not the violent downpours of summer storms, but a persistent drizzle that turned the world soft at the edges. Inside Roosevelt Middle School, Ethan and Lily's project had evolved beyond their initial concept. Twice a week, they met in the music room after classes, developing a presentation that combined Lily's musical selections with Ethan's illustrations. "I've been thinking," Lily said one afternoon, her flute case open beside her. "What if we turn your drawings into a kind of animated slideshow? My cousin works with digital art, and she could help us scan and create transitions between them." Ethan considered this, then wrote in his notebook, "That would be cool, like visual music." "Exactly." Lily's enthusiasm was contagious. "And I was reading about synesthesia. It's when people experience one sense through another, like seeing colors when they hear music. Is that what happens when you draw what I play?" Ethan shrugged, then wrote, "Not exactly, but the music makes me feel things, and I draw the feelings." Outside the music room, their friendship had grown in unexpected ways. Lily had joined Ethan and Max at their lunch table, bringing along her friend Emma from orchestra. The four of them formed an unlikely quartet, Max with his endless scientific facts, Emma with her dry humor, Lily with her musical insights, and Ethan with his expressive sketches. At home, Sarah noticed the change in her son. "You seem different lately," she remarked one evening as they prepared dinner together. "Happier." Ethan nodded, chopping vegetables with careful precision. He hesitated, then reached for the notepad they kept on the counter and wrote, "Made friends, working on music project." Sarah's eyes brightened. "That's wonderful, Ethan. I'd love to see it when you're ready." She didn't push further, having learned long ago that Ethan's silence required patience, not pressure. Later that week, during one of their project sessions, Lily brought something new. "It's an ocarina," she explained, showing Ethan the small, oval instrument. "They're one of the oldest instruments in the world. Versions of them have been found in ancient Chinese, Mesoamerican, and European cultures." She demonstrated, playing a simple, haunting melody that seemed to belong to no particular time or place. When she finished, she held it out to Ethan. "Want to try?" Ethan hesitated, his hands remaining firmly in his lap. Lily didn't press, setting the ocarina on the table between them. "It's okay. Some people think instruments are really personal. Like my flute teacher says, a flute becomes part of your breath, so it's like sharing a piece of yourself." After a moment, Ethan reached for his notebook. "I've never played an instrument." "Never?" Lily seemed surprised. "Not even in elementary music class?" Ethan shook his head, then wrote, "My dad played guitar before he died." Lily's expression softened. "I'm sorry about your dad." She was quiet for a moment, then added, "My grandmother taught me to play. She passed away last year. Sometimes, when I play her favorite songs, it feels like she can hear them, you know?" Ethan nodded slowly, understanding exactly what she meant. He reached tentatively for the ocarina, turning it over in his hands. It was smooth and cool to the touch, with finger holes arranged in a pattern he couldn't decipher. "You just cover different holes to make different notes," Lily explained, "and blow gently, like you're trying to make a candle flame dance without blowing it out." Ethan brought the ocarina to his lips, his heart suddenly racing. He took a breath and blew softly. The sound that emerged was hesitant and breathy, but unmistakably a note. Something shifted inside him, a small vibration, as if a long-dormant part of himself had stirred. They spent the rest of the session with Lily, teaching Ethan the basics of the ocarina. His attempts were clumsy, but Lily was patient. "Music is just another language," she said, "and sometimes it says things that words can't." On the bus ride home, Ethan replayed the afternoon in his mind, the feel of the ocarina against his lips, the vibration of sound traveling through his fingertips, the way Lily had smiled when he'd managed to play a simple scale. He thought about his father's guitar, still in its case in the hall closet, untouched since the funeral. That night, he dreamed of music. Not of listening or playing, but of notes taking physical form around him, blues and golds and deep purples that twisted and flowed like the autumn leaves in the wind. In the dream, he opened his mouth, and though no words came out, colors spilled forth instead, joining the symphony of light. November arrived with unexpected sunshine, the kind that transforms ordinary scenes into moments of extraordinary beauty. For Ethan, these moments had become increasingly frequent, not just in the golden light that filtered through changing leaves, but in the spaces between notes in the music room, in the laughter at the lunch table, in the growing collection of sketches that now filled his notebook. Their project was nearly complete. Ethan's illustrations had been scanned and arranged into a flowing visual narrative, synchronized with Lily's carefully selected musical pieces. Their presentation to the combined classes was scheduled for the following week. "We should practice one more time," Lily said during their final session. "I'll play each section, and you can signal when to change to the next image." They had worked out a system where Ethan would tap his pencil on the desk to indicate transition. As Lily played the opening piece, a Japanese bamboo flute melody that spoke of wind and distance, Ethan watched the progression of his drawings on the laptop screen. The first showed a solitary figure standing at the edge of a vast emptiness. The next depicted sound waves emanating from a distant source. The third showed the figure turning toward the sound, a hint of color beginning to infuse the previously monochrome scene. The narrative continued through musical traditions from around the world, each illustration becoming more vibrant and interconnected. The final sequence, set to Lily's rendition of a contemporary piece she had composed herself, showed two figures sitting beneath a tree, surrounded by visible music that connected them to each other and to the world around them. When Lily finished playing, she lowered her flute and looked at Ethan. "I've been thinking about something," she said, her voice unusually hesitant. "For the presentation, what if I talk about the music, and you, well, I wondered if you might consider playing the ocarina for the final piece. You've gotten really good with the melody we practiced." Ethan stared at her, his heart suddenly hammering in his chest. The idea of performing in front of both classes sent a wave of panic through him. He shook his head quickly. "I know it's a lot to ask," Lily continued, "but the whole point of our project is how music communicates across barriers. Your playing would make that point better than anything I could say." Ethan reached for his notebook, his hand slightly unsteady. "I can't. Everyone will be watching." "They'll be watching anyway when they see your amazing art," Lily pointed out. "But I understand. It was just an idea." She began packing up her flute, her movements a little too careful. On the bus ride home, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Lily's suggestion. The thought of playing in front of others terrified him, but there was something else beneath the fear. A small, persistent voice that wondered what it would be like to create sound that others could hear, to communicate without words or pictures. That evening, he found himself standing before the hall closet. After a moment's hesitation, he opened it and reached for his father's guitar case, dusty from 2 years of neglect. Inside, the instrument gleamed in the soft light, its strings silent but waiting. Sarah found him sitting on his bed, the guitar across his lap, his fingers hovering over the strings without touching them. She sat beside him quietly. "He wanted to teach you, you know," she said after a while. "He said you had a musician's hands." Ethan looked down at his long fingers, so like his father's. "Whatever you decide, Ethan, it's okay. With the guitar, with your project, with everything, there's no right way to find your voice." The day of the presentation arrived crisp and clear. The combined classes gathered in the music room, chairs arranged to face the projector screen. Ms. Jenkins introduced their project with obvious pride, and then Lily stepped forward. "Our presentation is called The Language of Music," she began. "It explores how music has been used throughout history and across cultures as a form of communication that transcends spoken language." The lights dimmed, and Ethan's first illustration appeared on the screen. Lily played her flute, the notes pure and expressive, perfectly matched to the images that transitioned before them. Ethan sat to the side, tapping his pencil at the practiced intervals, his eyes moving between the screen and the audience, who watched in rapt attention. As they approached the final sequence, Lily paused. For our conclusion, we wanted to demonstrate how music creates connections between people. She glanced at Ethan, who sat very still, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. Throughout history, music has given voice to those who might otherwise remain unheard. There was a moment of silence. Ethan looked at the final images waiting to be shown, the two figures beneath the tree, connected by visible music. He thought of his father's guitar, of Lily's patient teaching, of the sound that had stirred something long dormant inside him. Slowly, he reached into his backpack and withdrew the ocarina Lily had given him. A murmur of surprise rippled through the audience as he moved to stand beside her. Lily's smile was bright enough to outshine the autumn sun outside. She raised her flute, and together they began to play. The melody was simple but profound, Lily's flute carrying the main theme, while Ethan's ocarina provided a harmony that complemented and completed it. On the screen behind them, the final illustrations appeared, showing music as a bridge between worlds, between hearts, between silence and sound. When the last note faded, there was a moment of perfect stillness before applause filled the room. Ethan looked out at the sea of faces, Ms. Jenkins with tears in her eyes, Max grinning widely, Sarah standing at the back of the room with her hand pressed to her heart. As they took their seats, Lily whispered, "That was amazing. You were amazing." Ethan looked at her, at the girl whose music had somehow found its way through the fortress of his silence. The words rose within him, unfamiliar yet somehow right. His voice, when it finally came, was soft and slightly raspy from disuse, audible only to Lily beside him. "Thank you," he said, "for helping me find my song."